Welcome back to not only another episode of The Damage Report, but the last episode of The Damage Report of the year.
You
could have
totally
just ended the whole thing, I guess. Could have just ended the whole thing. But I guess we'll do one more year. But anyway, I'm here. Brett Erlich is here on a Thursday. Thank you for joining us, Brett. It's good to have you here.
It's great to be here. I will say this fact. I raised the chair up, this office chair that I have in my area now, which I took from wife because we got carpet and this leaks. So this is allowed to leak on the hardwood. But it's too high. So my feet are kind of dangling and I've never been more physically uncomfortable.
So if you're watching at home, first of all, we are a politics show. We will get to that. But first, Brett's not like a short guy.
I am 6.5.
That's not true.
I'm 7.5 feet tall.
I don't even think you could put up a chair high enough that your feet would dangle at a regular desk chair.
It's that I've also got this butt pad, but I can't adjust because I don't want to do that to Skip. Yeah, I don't want to get shorter.
Okay, well, we'll figure it out during a break or something.
Sleep with me or something. Okay,
that's
from 90s
locked
sitcoms.
in. Like that's not.
Anyway, this is another thing I do. I get people gifts like little footrests, and then I complain, and then I get those gifts. This chair was a gift to her. Now I've got a footrest.
It's just weird that you put yourself in a position where you make your chair so high that you need to raise the level of the floor. Anyway, by the way, can I just say, as I've said many times, I'm very jealous of your background. It's like the ideal framing of a background. I want your room.
Thank you.
But anyway,
well, come visit after you get over Streptococcus pneumonitis.
No, I'm feeling a little bit better. I think by Monday I'll probably feel good. But anyway, we've got a special show for you to close out the year. Not only do we have news, we're gonna talk about Ghislaine Maxwell and all that, but we're gonna mix it up a little bit in a few different ways. First of all, we don't often talk about movies and things like that because there's not often a reason to, but I yearn to, as you probably know. So we're gonna be talking about Don't Look Up and some of the conversation around this this satirical movie. Both Brett and I have seen it, so we're gonna talk about that. We're going to also look back on the year, talk about a little bit of the news that made the year, and give our impressions of the year and what we expect for 2022. And then finally, we will be doing Garbage People, but not just of the week, of the year. And you might be wondering, how is that different than Jerk of the Year? And I don't know, but I did pick a different person. I was very careful about that. I feel like Jerk and Garbage are different enough that I've chosen someone different. So Brett, you had a little bit of trouble actually.
I did. I was originally gonna make my Garbage Person of the Year coronavirus and then do some kind of heady dissertation, and I'm not smart enough, so I bailed. And now I had this whole bit. My favorite part of it was that it's one cell, it moves, so it can be a person if you're on the right wing.
Anyway, so we've got a lot planned, obviously. People are wondering if part of the plans are for me to stop shaking the camera. No, that is not on the docket, so just get used to it. But we will be back in studio next week, so don't worry about that. And if you would mind hitting the like button, sharing the stream, that'd be great. With that said, Brett, are you ready to talk about some news?
Yeah, and so is Just Here for the Free Drinks, who gifted 10 tier 1 subs as we finished a level 5 hype train.
That's awesome, thank you. Okay, well, you know what? In honor of that hype train, we'll talk about some news. So let's do that now. Yesterday, the verdict was announced. Ghislaine Maxwell has been found guilty on 5 of the 6 different charges that she was facing. If you want my initial reaction to that, we did talk about it with Cenk Uygur on the Young Turks yesterday. But in the wake of that decision, we have had a number of different statements put out by the victims in this case. And we wanted to provide a few of those reactions for you. So the first of all, for the first reaction, we have Annie Farmer, one of the victims who actually testified at the trial, who said, "I am so relieved and grateful that the jury recognized the pattern of predatory behavior that Maxwell engaged in for years and found her guilty. She has caused hurt to many more women than the few of us who had the chance to testify in the courtroom. I hope that this verdict brings solace to all who need it and demonstrates that no one is above the law. And that is true, that there are not only more specific victims that didn't testify, but we also, we all have this impression that this thing is broader, both in terms of the number of victims, but also in terms of the people who were involved as perpetrators of these crimes. We don't necessarily have any reason to believe that we're gonna have justice in that area or even understand who all the victims are. But I'm glad that Annie Farmer recognizes that. Her sister also tweeted, by the way, in immediate reaction to it, Annie and I are sobbing with joy as the results came out. And so usually in these cases, Brett, we'll talk about what our expectations had been for, would she be found guilty? I honestly didn't really have any impression. I mean, Epstein was found guilty, we did have that. So that's some reason to believe that there could be accountability. But I guess I just hadn't wanted to invest myself in getting my hopes up or anything. But she was found guilty, so that's something.
Yeah, for me, what's insane about this whole situation is, I'm very happy that they found justice for the people who ran a ring of sex trafficking. But what blows my mind every time is there's a photo of Ghislaine Maxwell at Chelsea Clinton's wedding. Is that real? Is that fake? I feel like there's enough very real photos of all these people, Alan Dershowitz, who we'll talk about in a second, I'm sure, and all these other folks, Donald Trump, Prince Andrew, the Clintons. They all went to these crazy ass parties together. And they were like, this is cool. Bill Gates, they're all going and hanging out with this dude.
You said Musk, right? I wanna make sure that we know that.
And Elon Musk, I didn't, but yes, they were all around in this, according to the testimony we've seen and photo evidence that we have, they all hung out with this dude. And I don't know how to reconcile that in the wake of all of it. To what, at the very least, I'm glad that justice is done for the people, though, Ghislaine Maxwell, the surviving, dawn of the creep crime family, who was there. Yeah. But I can't wrap my mind around the experience of what it must be like where Bill Clinton's like, all right, I'm gonna be back in a couple days. Me and Bill Gates and Trump gonna hang out on this island where you get rub downs from young kids. What?
Yeah.
And that not knowing what to do with myself is going to continue because there's no way in hell they're going to anything's gonna come of it with those other people we just mentioned.
With the tapes that supposedly existed and all that. Yeah, no, just apparently, he was an awful guy. And he had a woman who sort of worked as his henchwoman to track down these people. And they had all these parties, and nobody who went to the parties did anything wrong. Apparently, I guess that's the truth. Anyway, let's give you reactions from a few more of the victims, including Virginia Giuffre, who said, what Ghislaine did to so many of us is unforgivable. She used that charm, that wit, that smile to come off as somebody you want to trust. She described the verdict as bittersweet emotion because I've been fighting for so long. She went on to tweet, my soul yearned for justice for years, and today the jury gave me just that. I will remember this day always. Having lived with the horrors of Maxwell's abuse, my heart goes out to the many other girls and young women who suffered at her hands and whose lives she destroyed. I hope that today is not the end, but rather another step in justice being served. Maxwell did not act alone. Others must be held accountable. I have faith that they will be. And maybe, I guess she would know everything, all of it. Are they going to try to get that information from her, or would they be able to? What would they have to do to get her to reveal this information? Would she could be facing 40 years? What are they gonna cut that down to? She's already so old. Would it even be persuasive to her? And I know as we're sort of speculating about this, a lot of people are probably, I think, fairly, thinking the people that you identified that are in the pictures with her are some of the most powerful people on both sides of the political spectrum. So that's not going to influence this. If we never find out anything, who is going to say, oh, it's because there was nothing to find out? Who would actually believe that at this point? It sucks being put into this position. It's happening increasingly often where we're made to feel crazy. We're made to feel like we're the conspiracy theorists when it is so blatant, so right in front of us, Brett.
John, I did finally, so that we could stay friends, I did finish Wheel of Time and the show. And it, much like, everybody knows there's multiple books that go on forever, so I'm not giving anything away, but I'm not gonna give any details. But like at the end of the big season, it reveals there's more to come, a bigger, the larger wars to come, essentially. And that's in Game of Thrones too. The large war to come. This is a perfect way to end the season of 2022. Because this is something that is thematically linked to the major political struggle that everyone should identify, worry about, speculate about, and organize to win going forward, which is you have people on the left and people on the right, and they've all been in these camps and they've all been fighting against each other. And at the same time, within each of those camps, there's the elitists and the people. And the biggest fear of the elitists is that the people are gonna discover that the elitists are just hanging out together on some private island.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. And was there crime happening there? Was there the worst kind of crime? Yes, there was the worst kind of crime happening there. There was child sex trafficking.
Yep.
And if you're arguing about worst crimes, yes, I'm sure we can get in an argument, but it's going to be an argument that tears you apart inside because they're all terrible crimes.
Yeah.
But that is something that sets up next season where on every issue, people in the elite are going to continue to try to struggle to keep the people on their side and woo people over to new elites in new categories. But the truth is, and I'm referring to Tucker Carlson and everybody like him, that those folks also hang out at giant dinner parties together in their ivory towers as you try to figure out how to eat tonight.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
You know what should have broken through in that area? Like nothing will, because nothing does. But when Tucker Carlson, when it was revealed that he had asked Hunter Biden for like help for his kid to go to some school that apparently the kid wasn't qualified to go to. And it's like, okay, well, look, first, it wasn't like it was just last year. So, okay, that's fair. But like I went at the time and I found stuff that Tucker Carlson was saying about the Biden administration, the Obama administration at that point. And he was talking about them, that they're insane racists who are trying to fundamentally remake America, and they're coming for your kids and they're gonna ruin the world. And oh, hey, by the way, son of the vice president that I'm vilifying, could you help my kid get into a place? And also I'll see you at dinner, next week or whatever. But it doesn't cut through to people. We are a country of people who think that there's a chance that if I'm nice to Elon Musk on Twitter, he'll become friends with me. Like that's not how this works. How this works is that you can get away with terrible crimes for a very long time. That's basically how it works. And one of the people that was involved in that system functioning is gonna feature strongly in this next part of our story. So the BBC has been forced to apologize following some of its analysis of the Ghislaine Maxwell verdict. Now, why is that? Well, it had to do with their inclusion of Alan Dershowitz to discuss these topics. So they put out a statement. Last night's interview with Alan Dershowitz, who they brought on to provide commentary after the Ghislaine Maxwell verdict, did not meet the BBC's editorial standards, as Mr. Dershowitz was not a suitable person to interview as an impartial analyst, and we did not make the relevant background clear to our audience. We will look into how this happened. And I love Justin Ferragona's response to this. It's the only one that actually fits. We're all trying to find the guy who did this. What do you mean we'll look into how this happened? You scheduled him. Is the idea that they didn't know that he was involved in multiple corrupting ways in this story? Not only that he'd been involved with Jeffrey Epstein and setting up the sort of sham prison time that he had that wasn't prison time at all, but that he himself has faced accusations from the same people accusing her. Did they not know that? They're the BBC. Like that's not amateur hour. That's supposed to be big time. They should know this, right, Brett?
And in the interview itself, when Alan Dershowitz is analyzing the veracity of claims tangentially related to this case, wouldn't you know it? He impugned the integrity of the woman who accused him of participating in this. Like, not made up, very real. That is my recollection of watching the video this morning. He says, well, this is, it's kind of terrible how, the reason they didn't listen to this one woman is she's crazy. Like, oh, the federal government decided not to include Virginia Giuffre at all in this. And isn't that curious? And anyone who's mentioned remotely close to it, we should probably give him a medal. Like, that's essentially the through line. I love the BBC being like, and I'll tell you what, man, you're gonna see me twice on TYT this week because everybody's on vacation. So there's, the B squad's around to plug the holes, and someone, someone in the booking department was like, we can get Alan Dershowitz, I guess, is a reason.
He's a name.
Some vague, yeah, Christmas anti-Semitism involved, or that, but he's not doing anything.
Maybe. Look, that sounds bad, but I like that better than just, he's one of the people. He's of the class that gets to comment on these things, even if he's implicated. And by the way, we obviously have no idea about the individual allegations against him, their content, if they're accurate. I have no idea, so Dershowitz, don't sue me. But regardless, you can't bring him on to talk about it. That's just, obviously that should be out of bounds. Like, you could get away with doing that in America because we have no standards for anything. But like, I feel like in the UK, they're supposed to be a little bit better. Anyway, yeah. And people are saying in the chat that B Squad is either now the Brett Squad or possibly Best Squad.
Oh, that's nice. I do want to say something about Alan Dershowitz, though.
Feel free. This is the time.
Is something that you see in the highest tiers of constitutional argument is the weirdos, and that baffles my mind. It is always the weirdos who make it to that echelon because everybody else would kind of agree. It's the folks that say actually, and then go out on the ledge and say some insane interpretations of the Constitution that end up becoming like the scholars, in my opinion. Just because you end up, the people whose job it is to turn these, minor league judges into Supreme Court justices have the money and have need the most extreme interpretation of the Constitution and elevate them to the top. And then those kinds of people are so far up their own bums that they think to themselves, when someone shows up with an insane interpretation of the Constitution, they're like, well, that's impressive. I've never thought of it that way before. And it's just insane. That's how you get Dershowitz being like trying to put words in the mouths of the founders.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, we're gonna take the first break of the hour. When we come back, we're gonna give you a little bit of an update of 1 year of prosecutions against the insurrectionists from January 6th, as well as the legal argument being provided by one of the accused as to why he should be let off easy. I will give him this. It is novel. I've never heard this argument before. We'll have that for you after this. Okay, with that, let's get serious, okay? Because we gotta talk about some criminals here. Look, a lot of the people who participated in January 6th had been like whipped into a frenzy with a lot of conspiratorial ideas about elections and about government. And they tend to fall into certain patterns, but we have an exception. It is James Bonet, who pleaded guilty back in October to one misdemeanor charge of entering and remaining in a restricted building on January 6th. As part of the plea deal he participated in, the government agreed to drop a much more serious felony charge of obstructing the joint session of Congress that could have earned him up to 20 years in prison. As of right now, he faces a maximum of 1 year and is very likely to just get probation. So what did he do? Well, he apparently broke into Senator Merkley's office and posted a selfie of him smoking weed with the caption "Smoking at the Capitol building," which isn't as bad as some of the things that we've seen. But anyway, what's this argument? Well, as always, the lawyers are trying to sketch out the idea that this is not some like hardened criminal who came to overthrow democracy. And so here's what one of his lawyers says about him. This is Lisa Peebles, says that Bonet is a curious, impressionable young man, aren't we all? and believed that Lynn Wood and Sidney Powell and Donald Trump were highly educated, sophisticated individuals. He couldn't imagine that they would spread false claims, particularly the president, she said. So he believed at face value all of their legal arguments. He looked at video of Lynn Wood and Sidney Powell and said, these are sophisticated people. I don't understand it. But anyway, there's a reason that he in particular was ready to absorb this message, to distrust the government. And that is, as you're probably guessing, the food pyramid. Yes, he had long been suspicious because of his simmering hatred for the food pyramid. He related his distrust of media advertising to the food pyramid after he lost 150 pounds back in February of 2021 when he cut out carbohydrates, dairy, and sugar. This is according to his lawyer. He wondered why throughout his school years he was taught to embrace the food pyramid when doing so caused great weight gain. This revelation prompted James to attend the January 6th rally. He wanted to search for the truth. So it's not just that like he was suspicious of government because of all that stuff back in like the 2000s of the food pyramid. He went to the Capitol to discover the truth of the food pyramid. He hadn't started losing the weight, by the way. He did that after January 6th, Brett. But what do you think?
Do you think that he thought, so was the food pyramid secrets like in Jeff Merkley's office? Is that like opening file cabinets?
You just start like pulling on like candlesticks to get into the secret pyramid chamber.
I feel like that would be at the Washington Monument, right? Because that kind of looks like a pyramid, like
a little bit.
In the top of the Washington. The secret of the Washington Monument is it ignored the food pyramid. That's why it's just like the center section, like the core of a pyramid. Oh, I love it. And specifically, I like the part where it's like, listen, it wasn't my fault that I did that. This is the right wing. This is the party of personal responsibility saying not only that it wasn't their fault, it is someone else's fault, and it is the people who had proven themselves to be grifty idiots already on multiple occasions prior to that. And then to think that that we should listen to him at all after he says food pyramid. And that was some kind of federally mandated situation, which maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but I don't think anyone is shoving food pyramids down your throat.
Yeah, well, look, I don't have a problem with his anger over the food pyramid. I do think that it was like, first of all, I think it's difficult to understand. It led people to make bad choices and was definitely involved by lobbyists for big food concerns. But that said, that does not excuse participating in insurrection, particularly because of the timeline here. So there's philosophical issues with trying to use this as an out of responsibility for breaking into the Capitol and all that. And you still have to, think critically about what you're being told by people like Sidney Powell and everything. But the other issue is timeline, because look, the food pyramid was updated to a different My Pyramid back in 2005. But even that was entirely replaced by the My Plate back in 2011. It has been a decade since the food pyramid even existed. So why did he wait a significant portion of his life after it had already been replaced to start to question it, to break into government buildings because of it, and eventually to forsake the carbs that had ruined his health?
I love the idea of deciding you yourself are overweight and that you want to do something about it, but you can't because of a food pyramid on the wall. Most people would say like probably diet and exercise. Like probably if you're consuming too many calories and you want to consume fewer calories, you should consume fewer calories. If you want to exercise, then you should exercise. But the idea that like looking up at the food pyramid was like looking up at like a cross on a wall and some kind of otherworldly deity that, a deity was telling you that you needed to eat more carbs. It's just like, forgive me, Father. I get it. And the two are related because Christ's body is a cracker.
That's also the subtly pushing carbs on people. No, I do actually have a problem with the whole thing. It's like grains should be the entire base of it. Like that's just big grain that wants you to believe that. There are actually problems with this. And even more recently, when when the first lady under the Obama administration tried to like she wanted to add the added sugar to the labels and she was pushing for kids to not eat it. There was a lot of pushback, so they changed to just getting active. Like you can outrun the sugar you're consuming. There's actually problems with the relationship between the government and food manufacturers, but it's not an excuse for being an insurrectionist. That said, so far as I have seen, there's not video of him trying to bludgeon to death cops. He broke in, he smoked weed. He seems like one of the less dangerous ones. So if in the end they give him probation, that seems relatively not unjust, but I don't need to hear anything about the food pyramid to come to that conclusion.
I just love that. I did not have that on my bingo card of like what motivated insurrectionists. Especially the guys like, I'm really careful about, not eating too much. Oh God. Do they got a buffet in the Capitol? They got a buffet?
You don't know. He could have been eating Slim Jims after that or something. A little bit safer. Anyway.
I can't let's go. Of it. I'm too busy snapping into it.
Snap into a Capitol. Anyway, that's not how they should advertise that product. Okay, with that, let's broaden this conversation a little bit. It's been a long time since January 6th, almost a year actually. And the effort to track down and provide legal consequences for those who broke into the Capitol, and some of which tried to kill cops, and others wanted to murder the vice president or Nancy Pelosi. They certainly wanted to overturn the results of an election, has been a large ongoing process. It's actually been described as the largest prosecutorial undertaking in America's history, since already 700 plus people are facing charges. Now, there's still people that will be tracked down. That is still an ongoing process. And many of the people who are facing charges have not yet finished their legal process, but some have. And so we can actually learn a little bit about how this process is going. As of right now, only about 1/3 of the people who accepted responsibility for misdemeanor charges received prison sentences. So a lot of them are facing misdemeanor charges. And if they do that, there's a lot of probation that's going around, basically. More than half of the 71 rioters who were sentenced already this year avoided jail time, but the majority of those defendants were only facing a maximum sentence of 6 months even to begin with. 5 defendants have pleaded guilty to obstructing an official proceeding or assaulting, resisting or impeding officers with a dangerous weapon. Both of those are felonies with a 20-year maximum sentence. So that's where the most serious stuff is gonna come in, is the people who are clearly on film trying to murder police officers. Of the 63 rioters sentenced on misdemeanor charges, only 23 received any jail time. That those sentences range from 2 weeks to 6 months. On average, they spent about 51 days in jail. So I don't know, what do you make of that? Does that seem like what you would have expected? Does it seem like enough?
The most frustrating thing for me about the Capitol insurrection is that I feel this instinct to come up with new arguments for how right-wing extremists are bad. And I should just have to point back to that day. That, I mean, there's plenty of shootings that happened. There was a right-wing extremist who ended up shooting people in Denver this week. But like watching the news, watching the right-wing messaging sphere, what they've done is repeated so many things that are far less egregious than having an entire mob motivated by liars storm the citadel of democracy in America. Something that these folks wearing "Make America Great Again" hats on think, the thing that they're clamoring against was actually set up by the system that allows for free and fair elections in America. While their own party is completely cutting off who can vote, and even Rand Paul, the libertarian hands-off guy, admits that he himself doesn't want everyone to vote. And I have to keep every day, I'm like, oh, what's a new story to talk about to kind of build out this, what I've learned and, see a new incarnation of it. But I shouldn't have to. Worse, everybody else is telling you that what happened that was insane wasn't that bad.
Mm-hmm.
And when we see people being like, all right, you can go. You were just there. It's fine. Don't go to jail for it. And at the same time, someone who has like a 1/16th of an ounce of weed in their pocket goes to jail for, or someone who stole a Slim Jim from a convenience store goes to prison for a bunch of years.
Mm-hmm.
And that person gets to go home and be fine. Like that, it's hard for me to kind of regroup and figure out how best to, proceed and not feel crazy.
Yeah, and that's been a process that I think has been ongoing like throughout the year. We're about to hit the 1 year anniversary, and part of the reason we feel crazy is because it seems so abundantly clear what happened and why it's bad. But for all that we've made videos and tried to persuade people, Tucker Carlson, with a much bigger audience, has spent the entire year telling people that it simultaneously wasn't bad, but if it was bad, it was just the FBI that was being bad. And there was definitely no white supremacists. Don't listen to what they said or the clothes that they wore. There was no violence, and we're never gonna show you the video, so you won't know that there was. Like the whole thing it's like the most thorough gaslighting about a political event that I can remember in recent history.
Yeah, and all that plus yelling, "Hang Mike Pence." Mm-hmm. And those people want us to believe that the biggest threat to American democracy is kind of tracing the legacy of racism and disenfranchisement.
Mm-hmm.
History and teaching history is the big enemy.
Yeah, that's true. So look, in terms of like any individual random person, like the guy who smoked weed and was in Merkley's office, like I hate that. I didn't like that. I don't like why he did it or anything, but do I think that he should be in jail for 5 years? No, I don't think. Like I'm obviously angry at the mob, both that mob and the mobs to come that I know are out there waiting to be told what to mob about. But it also seems weird that there's 700 people who are facing charges, and they're all the regular people from January 6th. Because what they did is a crime. They were in an office they weren't supposed to. That's a crime. Trying to overturn an election because you don't like the result apparently is not a crime. And that's the thing that really bothers me the most about this and that makes me feel crazy is it is indisputable that in 30 different ways, the outgoing administration tried to stop the legal transfer of power. That is supposed to be this line in the sand that America will never cross. The line that differentiates democracies from countries that fall to dictatorship. They tried to do it. And we can't even get the country to agree that that happened, or if that it happened, that it's a bad thing. And instead, what we're supposed to get is some guys get misdemeanors or whatever. And that's the solution to that problem.
And there's a bunch of indicators, just to reinforce your point, like if you want the barometer of what Hollywood producers are willing to greenlight. I took a bunch of meetings, pitching shows, and anything remotely political, this is last year, before January 6th. Anything remotely political was like hands off. I was like, what politics shows have you guys produced? And this one company was like, well, we did this kind of stuff that no one would disagree with, and that can bring us together. And that is that, tracing the anomaly in America compared to all other countries, that we have a peaceful transfer of power.
Mm-hmm.
That was the thing. And now they're trying to normalize something that completely turns that on its head. Even Hollywood was like, peaceful transfer of power. No one's ever gonna step on that.
Yep.
And if they do, we're well past, reason and care.
Yeah.
But we're past it, and they're trying to. Everybody's instinct is to eventually normalize because you're living through it. Just look at COVID and this.
Yep. And by the way, we have a solid year and a half of the occasional question to Trump, like, hey, if you lose, you're gonna transfer power. And he would not say yes. And we would say, hey, that seems bad. And then we'd get yelled at that we're being hysterical or whatever. Why are you freaking out? Obviously he's gonna do it, you idiot radicals. Obviously he's gonna transfer power. How did that work out? How did that work out? God, it's great to be told that you're crazy and then see it come true in real life. Okay, so final thought?
Manchin, same thing happened. The media they needed so badly to think that Manchin, was on the side of Biden the whole time. And as we're like, he didn't promise that he would vote for this. He didn't promise. Same way Trump didn't promise he wouldn't, undermine democracy. Yeah. And at the end, same thing happened in both situations. They didn't lie. You just couldn't see the truth.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna take our second break. When we come back, Kayleigh McEnany being reasonable, and then we'll be talking about Don't Look Up, all that after this. This rando in the chat followed up their comment by saying, anyway, I have Star Wars tattoos, so I'm the only true nerd. I can't get a tattoo because I can't choose one thing. But if I did, there's at least a 25% chance it would be a Star Wars tattoo. There's like 25% chance it'd be Wheel of Time. But anyway.
What Star Wars character would you get tattooed, if anyone?
I mean, I don't want to be the guy who gets Grogu, but I probably would be the guy who gets a Grogu on my lower back.
You should have Salacious B. Crumb coming out of like your belt line.
No, I should not do that.
Like just terrible. Down in the bottom, like. There's that, and then the other thing so if I were to ever get a tattoo, it would be I've thought about this a lot. It would be the planet doing this. From the covers of 1980s Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Okay, I gotta see that. I'd probably get like a B wing and an A wing on my bicep. That would be cool. Anyway, okay, you know what else is cool? The news, as we will demonstrate with this video.
Show a little grace. If you have to wear a mask, wear the mask. Make the job easier for the flight attendant. And don't put a flight attendant in this situation. They're doing their best. They're working hard. We're all stressed because of COVID. Show a little grace to the flight attendants, to your fellow passengers. It'll go a long way and have calm airways. We already can't take the delays. We can't take brawls in the sky on top of.
That was Kayleigh McEnany. Yes, that Kayleigh McEnany just being reasonable about masks on planes, Brett. How do you like that to close out the year? Kayleigh McEnany being the good person.
I don't know what happened to her. First of all, I agree with that. It's so stupid that I have to now go like, oh, it took Kayleigh McEnany saying, don't make people who have to work in a metal tube in the sky's life harder than it needs to be. Mm-hmm. Like for her to say something vaguely normal. I can't wait for all the people. There's two things about this that are fascinating. One, the people who would instantly jump down her throat and just say, oh my God, that's ridiculous. Those people are at least consistent though. What's more intriguing to me are the folks who'll be like, yeah, good point, Kayleigh. But if I were to say that, or if anyone on the vaguely perceived as being on the left were to say, could you please put your mask on to make people's lives better? They would freak out. And that hypocrisy exposes the tribalism that drives me absolutely nuts.
That's fair.
And everyone wants to believe that anybody remotely encouraging caution when it comes to dealing with coronavirus, which has killed 800,000 Americans, trying to gaslight me into thinking that I'm a crazy person for saying like, can you please put your mask over your nose? Like it's proven clinically that it reduces transmission. Can you please go get vaccinated? That's all I'm gonna say to you. Please get vaccinated because it reduces hospitalizations. It just seems like the smart thing to do. And people saying, no, you didn't ask nicely enough.
I know. Yeah, 100%. You didn't ask nicely, and I'm suspicious of this, but not because of the people telling me not to do it, but because of the people who tell me that I should. That makes me suspicious. I don't trust that because those are people I would never listen to, but they're a convenient scapegoat.
Right. Anyway. And they can call me an idiot and literally call me insane. That's happened. The Will Cain, who's trash, is on sitting in for Tucker doing an impression saying, the only contagious thing right now is insanity. That was his over-the-shoulder graphic yesterday. It's like, no, that's not contagious. You're freaking, it's not insane that I want common sense preventative measures.
Yeah.
You're the crazy.
Anyway, but she did say the reasonable thing, so that's good. We don't often give her credit. People are already labeling her in the chat Kayleigh McEnany, which I like.
Love it.
I could make that a shirt. Here's what I would say though to her thing, like show a little grace. Don't make these people's lives more difficult. Just wear the mask. All of that is very reasonable. But why would you constrain it to just planes? Why not the same thing for Panera?
One option.
Big Y, like HEB. Like you are going to places where people have to work. How about we don't be awful at all of these places? How about we just show a little grace always when we're around people during a pandemic? How about we go a little bit broader?
And this coming from the mouthpiece of the, of Donald Trump, who was the most graceless human being.
Yeah.
And to just turn on a dime randomly. It's so stupid. And my suspicion is she knows a flight attendant. That's it.
Yeah, or Sophie says she goes on planes. So she'd like to not have it be delayed for 2 hours because someone won't wear a mask. But yeah, and look.
Or she's trying to get that spot on The View. That is not like Tommy Lahren said something quasi reasonable. Kayleigh McEnany saying something quasi reasonable. They are angling for a spot on syndicated network television.
They're gonna do it. No, they're gonna choose Kayleigh McEnany out of those two. I think. I don't know. You're right. Oh my God, I had not thought of that. She's being a little bit reasonable, specifically about the topic that got someone else weeded out. She didn't say about anything about vaccines though, so maybe that could still get her. But anyway, really fast, I also wanted to let you know, there was a woman who was on a flight from Chicago to Iceland back on December 20th. So she started feeling bad while she was on the flight, and she decided to take a rapid test, which I think is amazing. She brought a rapid test onto the plane. I mean, I guess maybe you expect to take it at some point during the trip, but it showed that she was COVID positive. So she self-isolated in the bathroom for 5 hours. And you can see there a little bit of her footage. She documented the experience on TikTok. So look, being stuck in an airport bathroom or airline bathroom for 5 hours sounds really bad, but it's also, I think, objectively better than being stuck in your chair for 5 hours. So I don't know, I think there are worse things. You've been on a lot of international flights, Brett. What do you think about being stuck in there for the whole flight?
That would suck. They have this argument. It's so tough. Thank you, I guess. As long as there's other bathrooms.
I assume there's got to be more than one.
This is the part where you feel crazy, and I also wear a seatbelt when I'm at a stop sign. When I'm at a stoplight, I don't take it off. I just do the safe thing, even if I'm not in the point of most danger. So I feel like putting yourself in that place, the truth is, in a bathroom and isolating for that, go ahead and do it. She made a call. It was a call whose instinct was to protect other people because of empathy and common sense. So she did it.
That's good. That's good.
And I wouldn't. I'm not sure. I feel like I would take my rapid test before I went to the airport. Way before
she might have. Maybe it took a bit to manifest, but yeah, that's totally true. And we still don't require, at least for domestic vaccinations. Anyway, to close out our plane block, Delta has slashed paid sick leave for workers with COVID. Right after the CDC came out with their new lower guidelines after lobbying from companies like Delta. Isn't it amazing how that works and how quickly that gets turned around? CDC says you don't have to take as much time off, so the corporations immediately make that required that you don't take as much time off. It's a great system we've got.
Yeah, that's it, and it frustrates me. That's why when people are like, I don't want to be that person who is a hypocrite because he is taking cues from corrupt people selectively. And this is terrible, and it's coming from the Delta CEO, among others, I am certain. But airlines, people don't know about it, but airlines were giving people time off to go get tested. If you aren't symptomatic but you've been exposed, you still have to come to work. And these are the folks that are giving you drinks, touching stuff, and breathing all the way up and down the plane. Yeah. And anyone who goes in there and says that, oh no, there's a filtration system and there's UV lights that disinfect. Come on, dude, that's not the truth. Like I would try to help put seatbelts back when you're going up after the plane lands, but the flight attendants would be like, "Don't do that unless you have gloves on. It's disgusting in here."
Oh God, yeah. Okay, well, with that, we have very little time left, but let's close out this first hour. Don't Look Up, the Adam McKay satire of a number of different things, but most likely about climate change and the science of it and the political and media and cultural response to it is out now. Brett and I have both seen it, and the reaction is incredibly divisive. Like there's all these headlines like, "Look away, why star-studded comet satire Don't Look Up is a disaster. Don't Look Up is an offense to good satire." Like satire is gonna get offended now, like as a concept abstractly. Don't Look Up review, A-list cast can't save painful satire. And look, we've looked at a lot of these responses. There's a lot of different responses to it. Some right-wingers just hate it for fairly obvious reasons. Some movie reviewers that I respect, like Alonso Duralde, has a really negative review of it. He doesn't think it's funny. He does like, there's those sorts of things, but there's also like arguments against, is it using satire appropriately? Is it being fair to the different people it's satirizing? So Brett, I was interested to hear your response, because I generally came out of the movie having enjoyed it. Like, so what do you think?
I liked the movie. I thought it was very well done. It is not subtle satire, and it doesn't look around. I love all the people that are like, one good criticism I saw was like, I think it's a little pleased with itself. It is pleased with itself, but there's so many people who are issuing criticisms of this movie in a way that is completely consistent with what the movie is pointing out about them. So my counter argument would be like, I feel like it hit a little close to home for you.
And it's supposed to, it intended to.
Why isn't it satirizing the other side? What other side? It's not satirizing the other side of climate change arguments? Because there isn't
what
one.
That would be. Yeah, like, and look, it's satirizing, I guess, climate scientists having trouble explaining the science, I guess. Like it tries, but I don't know, like how fair is an inherently ridiculous debate supposed to be presented? And the fact that it's like, that it's pleased with itself. Well, here's the thing. I feel like you kind of can't help but be pleased with yourself when you're right about something so important. Yes, if you're right, you're probably gonna be a little bit pleased about yourself. So look, that's a different debate as to whether it's effective, whether it will get through to right wingers. I would guess probably not. I think right wingers basically watch God's Not Dead over and over on a loop, and that's pretty much it. I don't think they're gonna watch this. And if they did, I don't think they'd get the message. But I think it's a perfectly fine attempt at it. And I don't think it misuses satire. Satire can hit you over the head. That's one form of satire.
Yes, and that's okay. There is nothing subtle about the scene in Doctor Strangelove where he's like, "You can't fight in here. This is the war room." Like that is a crazy over the top satire. There's a person writing a bomb. Like, I will say one thing you're supposed to do in movie discussions like this is lay out the premise. In the film, someone discovers that a comet is heading toward Earth. It's an unavoidable disaster. And somehow they still have trouble convincing people that they should do something about it, those in power, because they try to use it for political and monetary gain. And it explores all aspects of the media, politics, and culture, and the populace trying to come to terms with something so real and also so difficult to wrap your mind around.
With that, Brett, thank you for joining us throughout 2021. It's been great having you here.
Happy New Year. Watch The Young Turks later today. It's gonna be great.
Brett's gonna be on it.
I'm gonna be on it.
Definitely watch
Francesca's gonna be on it.
Got the New Year's Streaming Eve party coming up on the 31st. Everyone watch that.
We're giving away $120 in Shop TYT merchandise, so please participate. And again, that's Brooke and me, really not Photoshop. We'd had a whole photo shoot. I own that tuxedo.
Awesome. Okay, with that, thank you, Brett. Thank you, everyone, for supporting the show throughout the year. We do have big plans for next year, like the show continuing against all odds. So look forward to that. But until then, stay safe out there, stay sane out there, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Adarola. I'll see you soon.